California federal judge Edward Shen blocked U.S. President Donald Trump's intention to end temporary protection status for Venezuelan nationals who have been granted temporary. In Argentina, the General Confederation of Labor ratified the strike on April 10th in support of the pensioners and in continuity with the plan of struggle of the organization in the whole country. And thousands of displaced Palestinians continue to leave Rafah following the evacuation order issued by the Israeli occupation army. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll begin with the news. Stay with us. California federal judge Edward Shen blocked U.S. President Donald Trump's intention to end temporary protected status for Venezuelan nationals who have been granted this condition. Shen opposed Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem's decision to withdraw the status that protects some 600,000 Venezuelans from being deported to their country of origin. The ruling states that the U.S. government has no evidence that granting such status to Venezuelan citizens would cause any harm. After the inauguration of the current president, the Biden government updated the TPS so that it would be valid for another 18 months. However, Trump opposed this decision and requested the suspension of this prerogative. And also in the United States, congressmen introduced resolution to recognize Transgender Visibility Day. House representatives and co-chairs of the Transgender Equality Task Force, Pramila Jayapal and Sarah Jacobs, introduced a bill for the United States to officially recognize March 31st as Transgender Visibility Day. Since 2010, this day has sought to bring up a conversation about the violation of the rights of this community and the importance of its inclusion in the global agenda. After his second inauguration, President Donald Trump stepped up attacks on the transgender community by suspending government funding for gender transition surgeries for children under 19. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the Great Patriotic Poll presented the candidates that will participate in the upcoming regional elections on May 25th. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, announced that the elections of governors, legislators for each state's legislative councils, and deputies to the National Assembly for the 2025-2031 period will be held next May 25th. Likewise, during the event, the president of the Special Electoral Commission of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, highlighted that the candidates were elected by the democratic, participatory, and proactive elections. Moreover, they emphasized that for the first time, the state of Guayana Esequiba will participate in the regional elections. And the Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, denounced the Chilean state and in particular its president, Gabriel Boric, for having introduced before the International Criminal Court an accusation against the Venezuelan government for its alleged link to the murder in Santiago de Chile of the Venezuelan conspirator Ronald Ojeda at the beginning of 2024 after being kidnapped by individuals in uniforms belonging to the Chilean security force.
Aparte que es una barbaridad jurídica que no tiene asidero.
Apart from the fact that it is legally barbaric and has no basis, it demonstrates the absolute corruption of the Chilean Attorney General's office, which contradicts itself. When they launched their first line of investigation, that the crime of Ronald Ojeda, who participated in a coup d'état, in attempts at assassination, had an arrest warrant in this country, who was given refugee status in Chile, and who violated his own refugee status, entering and leaving Venezuela, to seek to assassinate Venezuelan authorities. They themselves ruled in their first line of investigation, which was the most accurate, that it was a settling of scores between arms traffickers.
And Panama extended the safe conduct for 3 days for former President Ricardo Martinelli to travel to Nicaragua. The extension takes place after the government of Nicaragua asked for clarification on an apparent alert issued by Interpol. The Nicaraguan government announced that it was suspending the trip schedule for this Monday because there appeared to be a trap against the former president of Panama. Martinelli, a 73-year-old business executive with economic interests in various sectors, took refuge in the Nicaraguan embassy on February 7, 2024, after his 10-year prison sentence and $1 million fine were confirmed for the new business case related to the purchase of media outlets with public funds. And Argentina's film industry is preparing for the 26th edition of the Buenos Aires International Independent Film Festival, Bafisi, which will be deployed as a space of resistance of culture. The event will be held from April 1st to the 13th in 13 theaters throughout the city, with over 640 screenings and almost 300 films from 44 countries, including Canada, Germany, France, Norway, Uruguay, and the Dominican Republic. The event will be inaugurated with a local film screening, Upa, a Spring in Athens, by Camila Toker, Tamay Garategui, and Santiago Giralt, as well as the screening of La Zurda by director Rosendo Ruiz. In addition to the screenings, the festival will also provide attendees with a series of lectures, panels, and presentations with international guests. We now have our first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Argentina, the General Confederation of Labor ratified the strike on April 10th in support of the pensioners and in continuity with the plan of struggle of the organization in the whole country. This Monday, in a plenary meeting attended by more than 280 members of the 79 existing regional organizations, the support for the measure was ratified, confirming also a mobilization scheduled for April 9th. According to Argentine media, it is expected that the pensioners' demonstration will turn into a work stoppage from midday to guarantee the mobilization to the Congress. It is also expected that on April 9th there will be an act with the reading of a document or the intervention of the co-secretary generals of the CGT, which will take place in the square of the two Congresses. Also in Argentina, the National Institute of Statistics and Censuses reports nearly 40% of population is poor, but numbers could be higher since the institution's methodology for measuring poverty and indigency is outdated. A recent index survey showed that poverty reached 38.1% of people and 28.6% of households in the second semester of 2024. However, the entity was questioned by different sectors because those results are based on the measurement of inflation, whose methodology has not been updated since 2004, when the basic goods and services expenditure was lower than nowadays. These distortions further increase the margin of error in periods of strong inflation variation. And in Paraguay, the National Police prevented an act of commemoration after 8 years of the murder of the young politician Rodrigo Quintana. National Police prevented the event and repressed the demonstrators, which citizens denounced as part of the consolidation of an increasingly authoritarian dictatorship. 8 years after the assassination of Rodrigo Quintana, a group of leaders and militants of the Authentic Radical Liberal Party and other opposition groups mobilized to commemorate the date with a theatrical performance in the courthouse esplanade. It should be noted that Quintana was assassinated by the police, and 8 years after the crime was committed by the government of Horacio Cartes, the fact remains unpunished.
A mí me preocupa cómo no podemos, ciudadanía.
It worries me how we, as ordinary citizens, cannot access our rights. We wanted to leave the background of the case of Rodrigo Quintana in the archive of terror in the Museum of Truth and Justice, and we cannot. We came weeks ago, we made the note, and we agreed that today we are going to come to make the delivery. And in the end, it is terrible. The dictatorship continues, and in the end, the archives of terror, the Museum of Truth and Justice, the dictatorship continues, and we need to continue demanding democracy and justice for our dead.
Es un atentado más a lo que
It is yet another attack on the increasingly diminished freedoms in Paraguay. But the party, and I think the majority of citizens, demonstrated this last week with a large protest of around 10,000 people who took to the streets to express their concern, their discomfort, and their disagreement with this system, and above all, with this government.
In Thailand, rescue work continues for the fourth consecutive day in a collapsed building in Bangkok after the 7.7 magnitude earthquake that had its epicenter in Myanmar last Friday. Authorities on Tuesday raised the death toll to 20, while they are still searching for the more than 70 workers who were trapped when a building under construction collapsed on top of them. According to the latest official death toll, some 34 people suffered injuries of varying severity during the earthquake in Bangkok, where 2 citizens who were in their respective apartments also lost their lives. On the 30th-floor building that collapsed, the death toll stands at 13, with the last victim reported on Monday night. And in Myanmar, rescue efforts are being hampered on Tuesday by the risk of landslides and aftershocks in parts of Burma worst affected by Friday's powerful earthquake. Some rescue operations in Mandalay, this country's second city and one of the places most affected by the 7.7 magnitude quake, located about 17 kilometers from the epicenter, had to be suspended on Tuesday. Efforts to find survivors in hard-hit areas of the city, including the Sky Villa condominium, the Great Wall Hotel, and the Lat Thane Monastery, had to be temporarily halted due to the risk of landslides and the impact of aftershocks, despite the hundreds of people missing at these sites. And in Australia, heavy rains caused severe flooding in the state of Queensland, leaving a death toll of 100,000 animals. Early estimates indicate that over 105,348 head of cattle are dead or lost as a result of flooding in inland Queensland. Speaking out, Longreach Mayor Tony Rayner said many homes have been damaged, but total losses will be known when the water levels recede. State Primary Industries Minister Tony Perrett said the impact will be devastating for producers and industries.
And obviously there are, as you've described, significant losses. As they get out and about, they'll have a more accurate assessment of just how bad that is, but a lot of fencing washed away, dam walls, bywashes, obviously livestock losses, and some houses have been inundated as well.
We now have our second break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final break, and we'll be right back with more. Welcome back. Thousands of displaced Palestinians continue to leave Rafah following the evacuation order issued by the Israeli Occupation Army for the largest area of southern Gaza as the humanitarian crisis worsens due to the blockade of the enclave. On Monday, the genocidal regime issued a new forced evacuation order, warning that soldiers will soon resume intense combat operations, forcing some 40,000 people to flee once again. In addition, evacuation orders were also issued Tuesday for residents of Bet Hanun, Bet Lahaya, and the neighborhoods of Sheikh Zayed al-Manshiyah and Tal al-Satar in northern Gaza. According to UN reports, 20% of the Gaza Strip is already under Israeli evacuation orders, excluding buffer zones and the Netzarim corridor. An Israeli army attacks on the Gaza Strip on Tuesday claimed the lives of a journalist and his family. According to Wafa news agency, an Israeli drone attacked the house of journalist Mohammed Saleh al-Bardawil in the known as Japanese neighborhood west of Han Yunis, resulting in his death along with his wife and their 3 children. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, at least 42 people were killed and 183 wounded in Israeli attacks in the last 24 hours. Since Israel broke the ceasefire and resumed its genocide in Gaza on March 18th, at least 1,001 civilians have been killed and 2,359 others have been wounded, mostly children and women. And the United Nations Agency for Children announced that 322 children were killed in the course of 10 days as a result of heavy Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip. UNICEF explained in a statement that the intense and indiscriminate bombardment, coupled with the total suspension of humanitarian aid, has put civilians in Gaza, especially children, at grave risk. The organization warned that the number of child deaths could rise if basic needs, which Israel has been blocking for a month, are not met. UNICEF stressed that more than 15,000 children have been killed and more than 34,000 injured in the past 18 months in Gaza, and that 1 million children have been displaced, deprived of their most basic needs. Also, at least 3 people were killed and 7 wounded in an overnight new Israeli bombardment of the capital of Lebanon, Beirut. This is the second such attack on Beirut since the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel came into effect last October. Residents of the Lebanese capital woke up early Tuesday morning to the impact of shells that caused violent explosions in a residential building in the Madi neighborhood. The attack almost completely destroyed the top 3 floors in the building, claiming the lives of 3 people, according to Lebanese health ministry. The occupation army informed that a Hezbollah leader was targeted, following the direction of the army and the Shin Bet.
It's just another brutal assault by the Israelis, as they usually do. They are violating international agreements. It's a strike as all the Lebanese territory is free game to them.
We were at home. You know, it's Eid al-Fitr. People have finished their work and have time off.
The brutal strike took place. We didn't know where it happened, but once the smoke faded, it appeared it was the building directly facing us.
Meanwhile, in Israel, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has resigned from his post. Israeli Channel 12 reported Monday that Smotrich resigned in a letter to Israel President Benjamin Netanyahu. A spokesperson for Smotrich said the resignation was a protest against Zionist Jewish Power Party Itamar Ben-Gvir's request for more ministerial positions upon his return to join the regime again. The resignation will not collapse Netanyahu's coalition regime, but it will increase problems for it, as the move highlights growing fractures within Israel's far right-wing coalition. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio presses NATO to increase military spending while millions of people in the U.S. face social cuts. The U.S. administration is especially pressuring Spain to raise its defense spending to 2% of gross domestic product, as revealed by Undersecretary Christopher Landau in conversations with Spanish diplomats. While Rubio speaks of lasting peace in Ukraine, his agenda prioritizes the enrichment of the U.S. military-industrial complex. Thus, this calls for increased war spending, contrast with the dismantling of essential public services in allied countries. And multiple forces of Chinese People's Liberation Army Eastern Theater Command conduct joint exercises around Taiwan Island. The Theater Command organized its Army, Navy, Air, and Rocket forces to close in on Taiwan Island from multiple directions. According to the spokesperson for the Theater Command, Senior Colonel Shi Ji, these drills mainly focus on sea-air combat readiness patrols, joint seizure of comprehensive superiority, assault on maritime and ground targets. The drills serve as a stern warning and forceful deterrent against Taiwan independent separatist forces. And in Malaysia, at least 33 people reported injured after gas pipeline explosion in residential area. A major fire broke out on Tuesday morning in Putra Heights after an explosion of a gas main. The fire, which originated near a gas station, was visible from miles away and caused the immediate evacuation of nearby homes. 3 nearby gas stations were temporarily closed as a precaution, although they were not directly affected. Although no fatalities have been reported, authorities are still assessing the full extent of the damage. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.